Well, all right, Living Environment fans, we're back here and it's Wednesday, June the 7th. And everybody knows what day that is. That's our day for book talk. Yeah, you've been reading one of these 4 books, or maybe a book that you chose, and you're going to share with me how you did with that book today during book talk. So we'll have this bell ringer. There'll be a quick head puzzle video, and then you can get right to work on the book talk. All right, the instructions are in the classroom ready for you there. So you don't need to wait for me to get you started on that. All right, but let's do the bell ringer now. All right. Hey now. Mr. Kovacs class. It's Mr. Kovacs class. You might learn on time. It's Mr. Kovacs class.
It's interesting too.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
And he's super cool.
It's Mr. Kovacs class. Yeah, we've studied mitosis and meiosis, and of course that should lead us into genetics, right? Like into heredity, because when you do meiosis, you split up chromatin and chromosomes so that the offspring get a different version of genes from their parents. And the guy who figured all that out, if you remember, was Mr. Gregor Mendel, Austrian monk, right? Mid-1800s. He figured that out using pea plants. Pea plants. He was fairly lucky that he used pea plants because pea plants are what we call self-pollinating. Their flowers are closed usually, okay? And so they usually pollinate themselves. So it's easy to get what he called purebred strains of pea plants. And then he was able to open up the flowers and cut out the reproductive parts of those flowers so he could control who was the parents of the next generation. So kind of lucky to use pea plants versus some other plants where, you know, wind might pollinate or insects might pollinate. He could control, and he planted hundreds of thousands of pea plants over 30 years or so, and he just counted what did the offspring look like compared to their parents, and he found some patterns, and that's the patterns of heredity. Some of the things that Mendel came up with was the idea of dominant alleles. Dominant alleles are the ones that show up all the time. If you get a copy of a dominant allele from your parents, it's going to show up. Recessive alleles are ones that are covered up by dominance. They only show up when there's no dominant around. Right? Mendel also figured out that you get 2 copies of every gene. You get one from mom, one from dad. And so they come in pairs. Genes come in pairs. What Mendel didn't know is that genes came on chromosomes. He didn't know anything about chromosomes or nucleuses of cells or any of that good stuff. But we know now that genes come on chromosomes, and you get 1 copy of each chromosome from each parent, right? If you have an allele for the same gene that's identical on each chromosome, 1 from each parent, we say that you're homozygous for that allele. And if they're different, we say you're heterozygous. Homozygous, heterozygous. And then we know very well that in humans, genes come in pairs and they come on chromosomes. So chromosomes come in pairs, and there's 23 pairs or 46 total human chromosomes. The first 22 of them we call the autosomal chromosomes, right? They're like the regular chromosomes. And then the last pair, we don't give a number to. We call that the sex chromosomes, because those are the pair that determine whether or not you become an egg maker or sperm maker as you develop. They're found on the last set of chromosomes. Of course, they're very scientifically named. The biggest one's called number 1. The second biggest one's number 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? The rinky-dink one is number 22. Chromosomes. Chromosomes contain genes. You get 1 chromosome, one of each chromosomes from each parent, so you get 1 copy of each gene from each parent. Right? Some genes show up all the time. We call those dominant. Some genes only show up if there's no dominant around. We call those recessive. Right? The way your genes make you look is called your phenotype. The genes that you have is called your genotype. There's so much good vocabulary that we learned when we did genetics and heredity. So in this quick review here today, the words you need to know, of course, are genotype, phenotype. Those are Mendel-y words. Dominant, recessive. Other words you need to know, homozygous, heterozygous, right? And then you need to know what a gene is and what an allele is, right? I always think of alleles, I call them the different flavors of genes. Like an ice cream cone is a gene, but they come in different flavors. Chocolate, but maybe you get strawberry, maybe you get vanilla, right? eye color is a gene. Maybe you got blue, or maybe you got brown, or maybe you got hazel. Different flavors, different alleles. All right, so genotype, phenotype, dominant, recessive, homozygous, heterozygous, gene, allele, Gregor Mendel, P. Plants, father of genetics. You got that right.